Hello, I'm Lany Wallace. I am the current parliamentarian for the Mississippi Model Security Council, and today I just want to go over some of the different motions to make throughout procedure and how to properly use the motions. So, starting just at the beginning of the session, when the president will bring the session to order, they will then hand over the roll call to the vice president, and you will be asked to either answer present or present in voting. The difference is if you answer present, you can abstain from a vote, but you can only abstain from votes involving a written amendment or a resolution. You can't abstain if we're voting on, for example, a moderated or unmoderated caucus. And then if you answer present in voting, you must answer yes or no when we're voting on resolutions and written amendments. You can pass a vote only once when we vote, again, on only written amendments and resolutions, but once it comes back to your country's name, you must then answer if, say, we're in a roll call vote. And then after that, a resolution will be presented to the floor and it'll be read to the body. The person presenting the resolution will have time to talk about the resolution, the merits, what they're hoping to get done with that resolution, and we'll open a speakers list. So when getting on the speakers list at first, the president will ask, anyone wanting to be placed on the speakers list at this time, please raise your placard. Because it is on Zoom, we will just have you raise your hand or use the hand clapping reaction on Zoom. We know that different updates have different things, and that's okay. And so then, but later, if, say, you had spoken and you want to be placed back on it, we ask that you message the vice president only, as they will be in charge of upkeeping with the speakers list, and the president will be more focused on what's going on with the debate. Different motions you can make that interject throughout the between speakers. We again say between speakers, no delegate should ever be talking over another delegate. If a right to reply is motioned for by a certain delegate, they must wait until the speaker is done talking to motion for that right to reply, and then if so, will be given by the chair. A right to reply would be if another country were to say a defamatory statement about your country that you're representing, and you would then want to respond to that saying that's not factual, and my country does not do said actions by the previous delegate. In a right to reply, though, you cannot criticize that delegate who made that statement and any other delegate when you make your right to reply. And again, those are granted by the discretion of the chair. Other interjecting motions in between speakers would be a point of personal privilege. Say you need to go to the bathroom. We just ask that you turn off your screen, like your camera, while you do it, and then turn it back on when you come. When you want to make an interjecting motion, just raise your hand on Zoom, or again, use the hand clapping if yours doesn't have the raised hands, and you would then be acknowledged by the chair in between speakers. Another would be point of clarification, point of inquiry. A point of clarification would be maybe you didn't hear exactly what the person before was saying and you'd like them to repeat or speak louder. Point of inquiry will be used if you need to ask the chair, what is the current set speakers time at, how many minutes are left for the time of written amendments. And then when points or motions are called for by the chair, that is when you'll make your motion for a moderated or unmoderated caucus. A moderated caucus is specifically when there is a set time, a topic at hand, a specific set topic. You just want to address only that topic. No other delegates can talk about outside information. It is only the topic that has been voted and approved upon by the body. And there's, again, a set speaker's time, and all of that must be included in a delegate's motion. For example, say I were to motion for a 10-minute unmoderated caucus with a speaker's time of 30 seconds on how we will be funding the proposed solution at hand in the resolution. An unmoderated caucus, though, is when delegates normally would be able to walk around the room, speak freely outside of session, but appropriately still, about the topic. It's more of an informal session, but now with it being on Zoom, we will have breakout rooms. So we will set a couple different breakout rooms so delegates can move in between breakout rooms, talk with different people, hear what kind of written amendments might be at the floor, different things that are easier sometimes addressed outside of the speakers list, so we can move into working on a resolution faster or just pass it. If that's what needs to be done, if there's no problems with it and we're just all saying the same thing. It's a good point to make sure delegates might be on the same page, see where there's some problems, what needs to be fixed. Other motions that can be made at this time would be to extend or limit the set speaker's time. So the speaker's time is generally usually set at 30 seconds, but if delegates feel that that's not an adequate enough time to get their thoughts out there, or maybe it's too much time and they're using less, well then they could limit it down to maybe 15 seconds or extend it to 45 seconds. This motion does need a second, as well as the moderated and unmoderated caucuses. And these motions also need a speaker for and a speaker against. So if there is a second, we will then move into voting on said motions in the order of most disruptive. So if we're going from 15-minute on mod to then maybe a 10-minute moderated, then we'll change the speaker's time or vote on that. Those would be like an example of an order of most to least disruptive. So they would need a speaker for and a speaker against on each of those motions, and then after that we would go into voting, and that would be a 2/3 majority. Those are votes that, whether you voted present or present and voting, again, you must answer yes or no. Another motion that can be made at this time would be to extend the time for written amendments. This will be used when a delegate knows that the time will soon be elapsing and that he might just need 2 or 3 minutes to finish up writing their written amendment to get it into the chair so it can still be then discussed upon when we move into reading them. Second, this motion would need a second as well, and a speaker for and a speaker against. Once the time for written amendments has expired, the president will then ask if there's any written amendments still being currently written on the floor, and if so, they will then ask for points or motions at the time to see if there is maybe an extension out there for written amendments for a few minutes, so then we can make sure everyone's written amendments get in and that they get their fair share to be discussed on. Once then we move into a time of reading those written amendments, they will be read in the order that they were received to the chair, and there will be a new speakers list to be opened and discussed on those written amendments. So throughout debates of these written amendments, a motion can be called for a previous question at any point. This can be called at any point during the session. The only thing the chair doesn't look highly on is if the motion might be called while the time for written amendments is still open, because we would like to discuss the written amendments that have been received. But say it is made at a different point when the written amendments are being written, you motion for a previous question, that motion would then move you would be voting on whether to move into voting procedures on that written amendment, or when that is motion for on the resolution as it stands. That is also when that motion can be called. But again, you will be voting on whether to move into voting procedures on whatever is at hand right then. Another motion that can be used throughout debate on a resolution that maybe isn't overall the best, but it has some really good points, is division of the question. Division of the question must be called after a motion for previous question has been called. That is the only time that motion can be called. And this motion is used to specifically highlight a good section that stands out, that everyone agrees upon, that the resolution might not pass as a whole, but to bring that out in division of the question, then to have that stand alone as its own resolution and to have that portion pass. So we don't use division of the question to fail certain parts that we don't like. We use it to highlight those really well written operative clauses. So after you've gone through the motions, you've gone through all your written amendments, and you're going to vote on a resolution as a whole as it stands, whether it has changes or not, you will then move into voting procedures. So you will vote either by placard or now your nonverbal feedback features, or someone is allowed to make a call to adopt by acclamation. So this would be saying that you think there's no abstentions, that it's going to pass with flying colors. Someone would raise their hand, and the president would call on them and say, motion to adopt this resolution by acclamation. And then the president will ask if there's a second, and then seeing there's a second, they will ask, is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, then the resolution passes, and we just give it a big hand. That's great. Another motion that we called is to vote by a roll call. This is when the vice president will then go down the list and call every single delegation that was present for the session and ask them if they vote yes, they vote no, they abstain. That would be a roll call vote. And then finally, veto powers. So veto powers are only used by the P5. So just as a quick refresher, P5 are the United States, the United Kingdom, the Russian Federation, France. Oh God. Oh, in China. So just as a reminder, the P5 are China, the Russian Federation, the United States, the United Kingdom, and France. Veto powers are only in effect when it comes to a resolution as a whole. They are not in effect at any other point in the session. So if one of the P5s were to vote no on a resolution, then unfortunately that resolution fails automatically. If only one of them does, it just fails. Throughout the process, when written amendments are being written, you can also write friendly amendments. The difference between a friendly and a written amendment is a friendly amendment is when you want to change a punctuation error. Say you needed a comma instead of a period, something needed to be capitalized and it wasn't. Anything that does not change the language of the resolution. If an amendment wanted to be written, that is when the language is going to be changed. Say I want to admit all of operative clause. We don't like it, we want to get rid of it. We would write then to the chair for omit operative clause 4. And then that's what would be discussed and voted on during the time of reading these written amendments. And other written amendments can be to say you want to change a phrasing, you want to cut it down, or you want to just change the language in general. That is only when a written amendment would be used. I hope you found this video helpful, and we're so excited to see you at our 2021 Mississippi Model Security Council conference.